Hey there, welcome to episode 31 of the FFS Talk audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. I'm recording this on the early afternoon of Thursday, June 27th, 2024. It's another hot day in Vegas, so why not stay in and talk about re-engineering the Great Rewiring. What does this possibly mean? Well, if you've been paying attention lately, you may have seen Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, making the rounds on the usual podcast / YouTube. They're not really podcasts, but YouTube chat discussion shows, even The Daily Show, about the impact mobile devices have had on a young, probably Gen Z, maybe some millennial, some overlap into the millennial generation, Gen Y. The impact of mobile devices and especially social networking, always on social networking, the impact on quality of life, mental health, the future outlook. Hopefully it's not too bleak. So he did just publish another book, and it's there's a link for it, The Anxious Generation. There's an entire website with some supplemental materials and so on. That'll be in the links. So I figured, I have thoughts about this, and I will say right up front, when I saw him discussing the new book and his research, he's a social psychologist, I believe. I don't know how much of his credentials are specifically with child development, or if he's, I was really more interested in what his conclusions were based on his discussions on these various podcast programs, YouTube programs mostly. He may have been on television. There's so much media to consume now, especially on mobile devices. So I became curious. Based on what I was hearing, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And a phone-free school, okay. I believe New York just passed some legislation even. I don't know if it was a school district rule or if they actually made it statutory that young people cannot have phones in school or can't use them in school, and it will vary from place to place and so on. Possibly one way to run experiments. The upside, based on what he has to say in his book, results can be seen when you limit completely we'll say regulated, but not, self-regulated perhaps, but completely unregulated mobile phone use. If you go from that to phone detox periods, don't use the phone while at school. So 8 hours, 6 hours a day, no phone. Impact can be subjectively seen in weeks, probably more objectively seen in months, but it's reasonably quick. So this is something that could be done experimentally with probably some effective discussion to be had on the output side. So I read the book, and now I have thoughts. And so I will describe my view, re-engineering the Great Rewiring. And that's a reference to the rewiring of the developing brains, the rewiring of developing brains in young people, adolescents, who first got a mega dose of always on, in your pocket connection to the internet in around 2010 to 2012. I remember those times. I think this is mostly because the BlackBerry, which was out before that, was not as popular with normal people. It was often considered a sort of a work device. But when the iPhone came along, there was no more typing T9 text entry on your Nokia 6190, 6160. You could expand pictures. You could pinch to zoom, etc., etc. So 2010, 2012 timeframe, somewhere in there, the introduction of phones that could always connect to the internet and eventually always connect to performative attention economy platforms. Interesting. So wherever you found this audio program, hopefully you can find the show notes in the episode description. I'll read you the summary, then I'll flip through some links. There are a few, and then we'll get on with the show. Summary: phone-free schools and Surgeon General warning labels are all the rage on both sides of each, and still other routes to fixing the pickle in which we find ourselves. Thank you, social media and attention and surveillance economy platforms. Something does not seem right about these solutions, though. Let's engineer this thing. Now, when I say let's engineer this thing, I literally just read another book, which I should talk about, probably in Quaggling Sand. So I'll talk about it there. But engineering is not applied science. It's finding solutions based on experience, based on information at hand, based on some scientific data. But sometimes the data isn't there. You have to go with what you know. And you have to make guesses, and you have to learn from mistakes and iterate and so on. So what to do with these crazy, dangerous phones? And I should point out, I did work at Palm, on the Palm Pre and the Palm Pixie. I did work at Apple, but in the Newton group, so I didn't work on the iPhone. But I have worked on mobile devices, to be sure. I worked at Netscape in the in the platform security group, I actually worked on secure email, probably more than anything else. And I do have a current project I'm working on to make information sharing at city scale easier without depending on social media. And I myself gave up most social media over the last couple of years. So we'll get into that later. So the first two shameless self-promotion links, as always, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo and Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. Now that we may be reviving a fifth podcast from the old days, from 2020, 2021 timeframe. So we'll put some information there, see if I can get my entire week and weekends filled with recording audio programming or maybe video. So I use buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo and Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. Hopefully you can click on those. So ko-fi.com/DanHugo. Hopefully, if you check those out, we'll have some information soon about getting that extra audio program back up and running. There are 45 episodes online, so I'll probably link to that first, and then we'll see if we can start adding. But if you would like to find out more information about the various programs that I produce and other projects and so on, I basically use those as a out-of-band announcement channel or connection channel, so that I don't have to maintain websites and whatnot for those. So when I launch the various websites that go with the various programs and projects, I can mention them there. It's just another way to reach people. It's less cumbersome and less imposing than social media, I think. So that's the usual. No obligation to pay any money. You can if you want. All of my projects are powered by coffee, except for my bills. Those, they do not take coffee beans, although you can mail them. They don't care. The rest of the links are regarding today's topic. First is the anxiousgeneration.com. The www.anxiousgeneration, no space, .com. That is the Jonathan Haidt recent publication, which is actually, the title is actually The Anxious Generation. So it's about growing up with phones and more. I'm simplifying. I should point out also, I don't have any credentials in the way of child psychology, child development, any sort of psychology. I know how to spot a crazy person, but mostly just a good guess. There's online supplemental notes and figures that go with the book, so those are linked at the website, anxiousgeneration.com, in slash research supplements -4 each chapter. They refer to them in the book if you get the audiobook, or you can check them out there. I did get the audiobook from my library because I didn't want to, so I have 2 more weeks. I might do it again. The author does read the introductory chapter, but he points out that he had a vocal cord injury when he was young, and it makes not quite. There are people with worse voices, maybe myself included. You could hear his voice kind of quivering a little bit. He said he really couldn't do anything more than the first introductory chapter. So there was another person reading. I do like audiobooks where the author reads the book, but not to be had for the entire book. But the supplemental notes and figures might be useful if you'd like to do some background checking on the content. I will say the book was worth reading, especially because I checked it out of our local library on my mobile device. Libraries, kind of the origin story for social networking. EFF, that's the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is a staunchly communication rights, privacy rights organization. They're staunchly supportive of that, and they throw some legal effort behind them, I should say. So there was an article on EFF about the Surgeon General warning proposed, where much like cigarettes or other vices, there would be warning labels on, I think it would be on websites. I don't know if it was completely 100% clear, but basically warnings about websites or maybe completely anything that you use on a phone. Surely, personally, I would say that that's not completely inappropriate. I mean, people still smoke. They still smoke cigarettes. Here in Las Vegas, you will find people smoking cigarettes. Although now that other cigarettes are more legal, they are sort of unenforced, prohibited in certain areas. But basically, if you're not causing any trouble, you can pretty much smoke a cigarette of your choice. Unless there's no smoking, then there's just no smoking. But people still smoke cigarettes. They have for many years, despite the Surgeon General warning on the box, on the package, on the pack. So I don't see this as too problematic. And in fact, if you read the EFF article, so it's at EFF.org, so you can click on the link, they point out that rather than putting a label on, there should be more government regulation and legislation to protect privacy and to shield people from dangerous interaction that might cause or do harm. So maybe why not just put a label on there to start? So their argument doesn't make complete sense, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. I do see where they're coming from. They are using a slippery slope, what do you call it? Fallacy. So that is usually the case with things like this. You're limiting free speech for all by no, a warning label is a warning label. It's not necessarily free speech, but they're also against age verification, which I find curious. And the article also points out that using a mobile phone in social networking is not the same as imbibing alcohol or dangerous foods. It doesn't need the same regulation as, the FDA might apply, Food and Drug Administration. So I would argue that there is a brain chemical interaction going on, the famous dopamine hit. Scientifically, maybe in question, but anecdotally, come on, we know. So I think it's a little bit more serious than the EFF is giving it credit for. I think a Surgeon General warning would not be completely inappropriate. I think it's pretty reasonable, actually, compared to the phone-free school notion, which we'll discuss. Another proposed solution from someone who works with adolescents, studies development. She wrote an article in The Guardian and has more story behind it and more anecdote. Basically falls back on parents should be more involved in the use of mobile devices by their children, and social media should be more closely regulated, I suppose. So both kind of take the hey, you got to take care of your kid approach, which is not wrong, but I have another idea. So Simon Sinek, a long time ago, Simon Sinek is the Start With Why guy. I've talked about him several times. He's got some good takes or interesting takes as a motivational or thought-provoking speaker for someone who's in a leadership role or working in teams or working on a startup. There are some interesting ideas he has. I think some of them are very valid. Some of them are maybe a little bit too optimistic, and some are a little bit speculative. So he was talking about raising a generation on dopamine 10 years ago, maybe more. So there's a couple minutes, I think it's 6 minutes, YouTube clip of him sort of casually sitting in a conversation on someone's YouTube show, or a clip from their show, whether it's on YouTube. Well, it's apparently on YouTube also. If it isn't a YouTube show, he goes into detail about what he's been talking about the whole time, that dopamine hits are not great. And he actually has a longer talk, I don't think it's a TED Talk, on the 4 brain chemicals that determine your future. And, that's usually like dopamine, serotonin, maybe adrenaline. No, I don't remember what the 4 are at this moment. I probably would if I thought about it. But so dopamine's a big one. As he says, it's the same chemical that gives you that little rush when you win, when you're gambling, or when you win a $2 scratcher ticket and you win $5. Ooh, a little boost. And he argues that it's the same effect you get when you see a new subscriber or a new like on your picture, a new comment saying how awesome you are, things like this. So he's been talking about this for quite a while. Finally, in the book, there's a reference to let grow, LETGROW. I thought in the book, I thought he said let's grow. So maybe that's one of the downsides of an audio program or an audio book. But letgrow.org, and I have a link to that, basically encourages or gives resources or suggestions. Let that kid walk to school. I believe one of the example suggestions is, if the school is far away from home, drive or transport a kid or kids to within a reasonable distance, and then drop them off, and they can walk a mile or half a mile or whatever. Half a mile, make it a little bit farther each day, so that they're used to crossing a street, being aware of cars, chatting with their friends, approaching a school as an individual rather than being dropped off in a vehicle. So all kinds of things like this. And as I will point out later, this sort of contradicts some of the other points made in the book. So he does seem to put some credibility behind the let grow notion, so I thought I would include it. So on with the show. Great rewiring. That's a phrase that is used frequently in the book, beginning in, I heard both 2010 and 2012 in the book. So in that window, I do remember I was in Silicon Valley at the time. I had a BlackBerry, and I do remember when the iPhone came on the scene. I remember when an Estonian friend of mine named Mark had an iPhone. It was the first iPhone I saw in person. He showed me the pinch to zoom. Technically, it is pinch to zoom out. But the 2-finger gestures, the no keyboard typing and stuff. Oh, wow, this is really neat. So yeah, 2010, I could see that. I don't remember exactly when the iPhone launched itself, but as I said, not everybody had a BlackBerry, but I was certainly using a smartphone a lot. The BlackBerry, the Bold, and the Bold was my second one. What was the first one? The Breeze? I can't remember what it was. But I was a big BlackBerry person, big fan. So using that style of smartphone was before that. So I don't know if that impacted kids as much, but certainly when the iPhone came on the scene, and then Android followed up with the Android One, which I had one of those also. Game changers. Always connected, always a big screen to look at. Correlation data, and this is what a big chunk of the book is, probably like 2/3. It's broken down into sections, but as far as like volume of information, it's a substantial component. The correlation data appears to indicate that social media platforms, constant engagement, always being connected, the profit motives of these platforms, you're the product. We've heard these before and they're true. If I make money on my new picture sharing or video clip sharing platform, if I make more money by having people watch videos all day, am I going to be thinking, but is it good for their health? You would hope, and I probably would, but that's not generally true. So the user is the product. Is the user knowingly the product? A young mind may not completely grasp that knowledge. You see this all the time with people sharing some personal information, and I often, given my background, I'll say, once you share that, you really can't unshare that. You cannot recall a photo. You can't recall your social security number. It's very difficult to change that. You can't undo certain things. And you certainly can't unwatch a couple of hours of pointless video that was fed to you specifically to keep you engaged, to continue to make advertising revenue off of you. So if you're not aware of how the algorithms work and so on, if you don't really give it a thought because you don't have that experience, I have to say I kind of see that part of the case being made. I mean, I do see it, but it is convincing when you map the correlation presented with personal experience. Now, he goes into mental health and mental crises for some people, some young people who've experienced some profoundly bad outcomes or ongoing trauma, difficulties, unhealth. So if they don't know how the world of constant connection is monetized and how it may be taking advantage of you, it may just be fun, and this is a word that comes up often. It may be fun until it isn't, and that's how money is made on the fun part. Keep you coming back. So I get the correlation argument, and I get the real, described and measured impact on people who have grown up with these devices. Now, if you're a Gen Xer like me, you grew up, I grew up going outside, even in Phoenix, Arizona. I don't remember the date, but I remember the day. If you've ever seen a utility vehicle, especially in warmer climates, they usually would have a large, usually orange, cooler, a cylindrical cooler with a little spigot. And if they were smart, it was filled with ice and water. There was a big thermos type device to keep the water cold, and it would be full, probably the size of a 5-gallon, I think they're called carboys for water coolers and so on. So you'd see these strapped to the sides of trucks. So my dad got us one and put it outside and said, you can do whatever you want. You can hang out outside. You can ride bikes. You can go do whatever you want. But I expect this to be empty. In other words, drink water. We did live in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was the summer. So the notion of going outside, the notion of interacting with people our own age. I did a previous episode of Quaggling Sand about how I used to go to the library all the time. I would occasionally ride my bike to places far away. I think I did ride my bike to the library in downtown Glendale, Arizona, at least once. I would ride to other places, stores and so on. I would ride my bicycle to my friend's house, which was probably about a half a mile away, et cetera, et cetera. I was a Boy Scout, so we would go on camping trips sometimes, getting out of the house. None of this included having a mobile phone of any kind anywhere near me. I would not get a mobile phone until I was working at Netscape, and they offered a deal, employee discount for a Singular. I got a 2160, which was huge, but just like that, I was using a cell phone and able to text, and that's about it. If you ever used a WAP browser, that doesn't really count. So the beginning of always on access to the internet, and again, I was working at Netscape, so Netscape is part of the journey, bringing people online, connecting people with information and so on. And in the early days, that was, Shoutcast was the big thing when I was at Netscape. Having Shoutcast servers running on your computers to make development machines. You'd have all kinds of stuff running on them to see if it worked. So shoutcast was a big thing. The integrated news reading, Usenet has sort of gone by the wayside, but lots of reading, lots of image sharing, eventually multimedia. The shoutcast was mostly audio at that point. A lot of moving images for advertising, eye-catching, eye candy, as they used to say. So in those early days, and this was 96, 98 timeframe, there was no Facebook. There was no Twitter. So there was none of that stuff. It was the early days. So I had my cell phone. I also had a pager. So there was really less need for the pager. So got the cell phone, was now able to contact people to do what? To coordinate meeting up with them. So we would go play pool at the Blue Chalk in Palo Alto. We'd go to downtown San Jose. We'd go to this Japanese restaurant in Cupertino, and I don't remember the name of it. It was a little tiny house on very near Apple. But anyway, it was mostly about like, hey, where do you want to meet up? Hey, I'll be there in 20 minutes, etc. So the mobile communication device was still used to coordinate in-person gatherings, where the brain of old was wired up based on proximal interaction. So meeting up with people, talking to them in person, hanging out at school, hanging out after school, hanging out on the weekends, going to the mall, having an after-school job. I worked at McDonald's, among other places. Higher quality relationships and fun derived from play. And a play is a word they use in the book, but at some point you have to say, well, play when you're 5 is different than play when you're 16. But essentially it's free time. It's doing things with other people. It could be sports. It could be playing Dungeons and Dragons. It could be watching movies. It could be doing anything that's fun, right? And it's important to know that fun is derived from play in this case, or doing fun things. And later in the mobile connected device generation, fun doesn't have the play component. Fun or being entertained is now a passive activity that you do by yourself, staring at a screen. So I do see that difference, that painfully obvious, in fact, if you really think about it. So we had the proximal connection with people that in the old days, or for us old people, whereas the phone-connected young have replaced good proximal relationships. So you might have 10 coworkers, friends. I would say, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to say there were about 6 or 7 of us that would hang out frequently. Two of us were coworkers. 3 of us were college friends. 2 other people were friends with one of those people. So it was a loose gathering. And, like I said, we'd go play pool or go to restaurants or go do whatever. Sometimes we'd go see movies. That was a different group of people. But so you'd have actual human interaction. People you'd actually spend time with and people that you're close to. You would see them in person. You could call them a friend or acquaintance. If young people have anything close to that, it's typically remote, distal engagements. Maybe the people that they engage with are not in the same city. They're somewhere online, maybe some abstract notion of a friend or follower on a social media platform, or someone who we used to call it flaming, but now it's trolling, I guess. But people who sort of effortlessly insult and berate people in comments, and who knows? Who are these people? We never know. So I can see that. I can absolutely see this being a problem if we had, and you can look at the pandemic as a 2-year window, but if in general student age young people recently, over the past, since 2010, it'd be the last 14 years. But if you look at just the last 5, 6, 7, I see a difference. So I can see I'm tending to listen to the correlation presentation of this book. I kind of agree, tell me more. I'm not ready to argue against the findings, the correlation findings. because I can anecdotally agree. And anecdotes are not the same as actual research, but they do make listening to the research a little bit easier. There's not the tendency that you find with some people on the internets to immediately say, yeah, but what about, in this case, what about is, that's the same thing. So I'm seeing the same thing. If we remove playful interaction, and I don't know anecdotally because I really don't hang out with really young people at all, but I used to live near an elementary school, and I used to hear outdoor play sometimes. So I guess they were still doing that, playground type stuff. There are several parks near where I live. Not a lot of use during the hotter times of year, but there are people riding bicycles and so on. So if people of all ages are doing individual, now riding a bicycle is not usually a group activity unless you ride with a group of fellow bicyclists. There's at least one, maybe two groups of people that do that. I think they do it on a particular Wednesday each month here mostly in the downtown Vegas area. It's called Hammer and Cycle. So there are people, but those are usually older people. So younger people may not have those in-person engagements, playful interaction in person. And again, playful being playing cards, playing sports, even playing video games together in a room rather than networked. Going out to dinner, I would consider a fun activity, right? Going out with your friends, going and see a movie. Doesn't have to be playing in a playground, but at a younger age, so free play could take on many meanings. I think it's important to decide that's what that means. Otherwise, people could dismiss that. Like, play. What is playtime when you're 15? That might be something very different. So if playful interaction is replaced by screen-based entertainment and possibly unhealthy social engagements where you may be talking to someone who's pretending to be similar age, but they're actually much older, and all kinds of minefields to navigate. You get easily found fun without doing any of the effort, none of the work. You don't go or do, you watch and type or look into a camera lens. So evolution breaks in that case because humans are social. So I'm buying all of this rewiring possibility. Tell me more, as I was saying to myself during the audio program. By the way, I listened to this book while I was outside walking, by myself though. But occasionally I interact with people that are outside. There's an old truism that one does not necessarily, or that correlation. The title of this section is Correlation versus Causation. So that one does not necessarily imply the other. That is, correlation does not imply causation. Though I think it might be more useful sometimes, maybe in this case, to say that one does not confirm or validate the other. So correlation with, as presented in this book, does sort of imply causation. Imply, that doesn't verify, not scientifically, but I think, again, anecdotally, you can listen to the correlation presentation of the book, which is a chunk of it, and then you could say maybe it is possible that the phone is causing these really fundamental, early child development, brain development, social development, anything development. Maybe there's something there. So I would say in this case, imply might be an okay word. The dopamine hit has been raised as a cause for concern for many years, even by Simon Sinek. Like I said, that video is brief, and he basically says exactly the same things that are said in the book, but he doesn't have quite as much. He doesn't have the credentials, and he doesn't have the research effort that went into gathering the correlation data. But his statements align pretty clearly. There's always pushback, though, that direct gold standard study results do not necessarily confirm a causal relationship between mobile device use, especially social media platform use on mobile devices, and the correlated behaviors and outcomes that are asserted as being causal or possibly causal in the book. I think they Haidt and whoever he's doing research with really want to make a causal connection, and I don't know that it's there yet. Now, the dopamine hit has already been pushed back on. Anytime you hear somebody talking about dopamine and social media and likes and so on, there will be a flurry of counter arguments that, well, this really hasn't been shown, hasn't been proven, no double-blind study proving the causation. So that may be true. But I think from personal anecdote, anyone could reasonably say, I think there's something here. There's something to consider. If you use a mobile device, and if you have used social media platforms in the always connected mode, that is, you don't put the Facebook down and eat dinner, go to the bathroom. By the way, mobile devices are amongst the dirtiest things that we have on us at all times, mostly because people use their phones in the bathroom. So you can wash your hands, but you don't clean your phone properly. So your phone is in a place, especially a public restroom, where there are particulates floating around in the air and you're touching the phone with your hands and so on. So if you are using your mobile device to be always connected, always checking, always waiting for that ding, the notification, alleged dopamine hit, then, and if you're taking pictures of your lunch, I used to do that. In fairness, I was taking pictures of mobile food, of a food truck food, and posting it on my Twitter account as sort of a supportive foodie, food truck fan thing, but it's still, you're spending your time, just eat the food, don't take pictures of it. Or making your current location look as impressive as possible. Who hasn't done that, right? Even if it isn't impressive, then you, like me, may lean towards wait a minute, I would like to maybe pursue some casual analysis of the correlations that I myself have identified. So again, if you were to read or listen to this book or look at the studies, maybe the supplemental information, you may find yourself as well saying, you know what? I have observed this. I have observed this in myself sometimes. Now I will say, I think I'm going to get to this later too, but I'll just sort of inject this here. I really got to, I did an experiment with Facebook. I have a total of 3 Facebook accounts with my name and picture. So they're all me. One, I accepted every friend request and I invited every friend suggestion to connect. So I hit 5,000, which was the maximum at the time. I assume it still is, very quickly. And that is unusable. That is a complete and total waste of time and energy. Experiment done. Total train wreck. Absolute garbage. There's another one that was only people I know. So I have to know you personally. And that was a much smaller, I think it was maybe 500 quote unquote friends. That was a little bit more useful. Then the third one initially was for like business contacts and so on, but nobody uses, that's what LinkedIn has become, the Facebook of business, and it's just as garbagey and algorithmy. But so the third account is the only one I really kind of look at. The other ones I've kind of given up on. Well, I've given up on Facebook. So I look at that third one whenever there is a thing on Facebook that I'm forced to look at. But I mostly figure if it's only on Facebook, I'm not going to look at it because I don't care. It's sort of Facebook is a bad neighborhood and not worth visiting. Unless your friend lives there and you're like, well, can't you come to my neighborhood instead? So Facebook and Twitter I'm done with. The value proposition just wasn't there. But I will say, when you first started using Facebook, when I had to use my college alumni email address because you had to be a college student to sign up with Facebook, first signed up with Twitter. Oh, I can use Twitter in the food truck scene because I was a big fan of food trucks in the Bay Area. That's another topic for another day, which I have talked about previously in Quaggling Sand, I think, and also in Cafe Genius Impresarios. So there was some utility there, but you still end up with, and Instagram, I would post the foodie pics and all that crap. There is, without even thinking about it, this bit of whatever it is, like, ooh, I usually would turn notifications off because they're just annoying. But if the little ding and you look and like so-and-so liked your picture or somebody followed you, there is a little like, oh, cool. And if that's your validation, I can see where that would be unhealthy. It was unhealthy when it wasn't my validation because it still actually kind of is your validation. Like, oh, I didn't get any likes on my picture. And the thing that really, I mean, anyone would have this feeling or this response if you have 1,000 followers or 1,000 friends, and then one day you look and 998, what happened? And I will admit, sometimes I'll be like, I wonder who it was. And they may have deleted their accounts. They may have decided they only want to follow people they talk to more frequently, whatever it is. It's not necessarily like, and if you understand this, then you go, I wonder, whatever. Now, from a business standpoint, it might be interesting to see, oh, I made that post and now I have 10 fewer followers than yesterday. That might be interesting from a business perspective, but generally speaking, people do their thing. They may, like me, decide, man, I don't want to follow people on social media platform. I don't want to be on social media platform. So putting too much weight onto those numbers is easy to do. If you've been around for a while, if you didn't grow up depending on these numbers or literally feeling the effects of them. But if they're just if they're a data, like a thing, like an event, oh, got more likes, got more followers, oh, lost some followers. It's something you notice, and it's something that occasionally you might look into if it depends on what the value is, but it's not like a reason to be depressed or sad. It might be noteworthy for business, or if you are monetizing and you're an influencer, those numbers are business. That's a specific case. But if you put real value, emotional value on these numbers, on these values, you could get into trouble, I think. I can see where that would happen. If I was weighing certain numbers heavily, emotionally, then I would be like, wow, what happened? What did I do wrong? What did we post? Maybe it's not about me. Maybe it's not about you. They're just numbers. So I think, if anybody using these platforms, like I said, sorry, I don't have to filter that out. I just bumped into the microphone. If you use social media and you are not looking at the correlation data between social media use at young ages and lack of mental health, mental unwellness, even real depression, actual self-harm, etc., then you're probably lucky. You're probably unusual if you have no sense of that. So we might have a problem. I myself have drastically reduced use of the old social media platforms. Like I said, I don't post anything to Instagram anymore, although I do have an Instagram account that we started for Innovate for Vegas, which has been renamed for the information sharing platform. So it will be sort of a little advertising thing. I put a coming soon. I deleted all the other images about hackathons and an upcoming this and that. So there's one image coming soon, information sharing platform. But so I essentially flip through there sometimes because guess what? That's where news is released, which is unfathomable to me. Algorithmic news delivery doesn't work. So you'll see things like, that was 3 days ago. Oh, upcoming. Oh, no. So I guess you go where your audience is or something. But I stopped using Instagram, my personal account. I've stopped posting to completely. That was end of 2023. But I essentially only posted one image every month, and it was a countdown to the end of the year. So I spent 1 year warning people. So I technically stopped using Instagram 18 plus months ago, as we record today on June 27th, 2024. Twitter, I think I've made 2 posts because sometimes there's people that you contact them via Twitter. But for the most part, Twitter is garbage, whatever you want to call it. Facebook, like I said, it's been a couple years. I passively check on something if I need to, but mostly, I disabled the email notification. Hey, you have a friend suggestion. Not really. I got rid of some of the lesser social tools and whatnot well before that. I do use YouTube to watch various types of programming. I found commenting on YouTube videos is essentially never worth it. The rare occasion where it seems like it might be worth it, it actually ends up not being worth it. So you're like, oh, maybe? No. Dopamine? No, not at all. So I wouldn't call YouTube a social platform in the way I'm using it. It's more just it's a cable box with lots of channels where I don't get to control the channel selection directly all the time. LinkedIn, I stopped making posts to, so I doom scroll through there every once in a while to see what people are doing. I have proactively removed connections on LinkedIn if they are unresponsive or not valuable. That sounds horrible, but if you're not going to respond in any way, then we're not really network connected. We are names in a database, no value. So yeah, LinkedIn decreasing value, but social media platforms of old are literally old. What has increased over that time interval is the use of my mobile devices, and I have a desktop and a laptop and all that nerdy stuff. I'm a software engineer after all. I've emailed people directly and I tell them I'm not using LinkedIn, so don't DM me. You can email me. Here's my email address has been the same since 1996. So you can email me anytime you want. And if you're like, I wonder if that's still, it is still my email address. 1996, March, I think, 1996, back when the internet had $75 to register a domain name. So I email my friends. I've always read articles on my phone. I listen to audio. I don't listen to music on my phone as much, but I listen to audio programming, watch YouTube videos on my phone. If I'm using public transit, that's plenty of time to check some emails on my phone or to catch up on articles and so on. So yeah, I'm using the mobile device the way it makes sense to use it and not getting drawn into distraction and despair with brain chemistry altering interactions that make other people money and make the product that is the user doom scrolling sad. I can't say I've ever been made sad, but I have spent far too much time, my time, that I will never get back on social media over many years. By the way, I signed up with LinkedIn in 2003, in August of 2003. And so in August of 2023, I did a special post and I said, I think 20 years is enough. And I had been posting there just like Instagram that I'm no longer using the platform. And I try to remind people if they reach out to me in direct messages, I'll email them back and say I don't use that anymore. So it actually takes effort to divorce yourself of social media platforms. And some people figure, oh, I didn't see you posting anymore. I thought you disappeared. Because social media is life for some. And these are even people that are older than me even. I mean, not that I'm that old, but we're not talking young people who are completely committed to third parties driving their engagement with algorithms. And, oh, why do you use email? You should be using insert platform, right? Now, I think the phone, first of all, the phone is a toolbox, so you can't blame everything. Like I said, I read a lot. The web browser itself is fine. I did used to work in Netscape, so Firefox is kind of probably a ship of Theseus. It's probably very little of the same code, I would hope. But yeah, web browser on the phone, make heavy use of it. Don't really have many, didn't have many applications when I was ramping down off of Instagram and Facebook and all that. I don't have for years, I did not have the native applications. So accessing Twitter and even LinkedIn now, the occasions when I skim through and see what people are up to, mobile browser, or desktop browser, no LinkedIn application. So to me, connecting mobile device and social media, making them making them the same thing, is almost literally, as the saying goes, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So making phone-free schools, which we'll get to me is intensely heavy-handed and avoids the problem. So to be fair, arguments that social media networking is not something to be regulated, like on, say, food or drugs or smoking, etc., may be wildly incorrect, because arguably there is brain chemistry impact, right? This is where the scientific causal or causation discussion becomes pivotal. If there is causal relationship that can be proven, can be shown with scientific data, double-blind studies, and all that, then the arguments that these are, they're not as dangerous as food and drug. No, they are. Same results. And this is the Simon Sinek point. You get the same dopamine impact in his view and in the view of others. So strict scientific proof would end this argument. But he says you get the same impact from gambling or smoking or risky behavior or getting a compliment, or, it's the feel-good drug. Like, ooh, good stuff. And if this can't be connected scientifically in a causal relationship, then you get it could be other things. And it's very easy then to remove, like, okay, well, maybe it's not just the phone, or maybe the parents should take more control of it. It's not the responsibility of the nanny state, except when it is. That's, again, an argument that flops all over the place. But if we're talking brain chemistry and brain chemistry alteration with long-lasting, potentially detrimental impact, then the argument that there's no impact is sort of incorrect. If we can show the causal connection, but even the correlation data suggests that there is really a problem that goes deeper than, feelings are neurochemistry, but it's not merely, you're distracted and you're not getting good sleep because you're on your phone until, late hours, and the blue light causes, there are things like that you can kind of brush away. But if there are real fundamental, literal rewirings during developmental or formative years, actual impact on brain structure and response and thought processes and how brain chemistry functions, and if those are altered or damaged, which these are the causal relationships that would actually matter if they can be shown, then that's a huge problem. It's hard to undo those things. So here we go. I agree that the correlation data is cause for concern, that it's something I can agree with. It's something that I'm not finding myself. I don't say, no, this is ridiculous. There's no relationship here to brain chemistry. This is not like taking drugs. We used to call, when I was working at Supermac, I think I first heard this, eye candy. When you have a lot of colorful, highly saturated images and moving, and it draws your attention and keeps you engrossed. That's what a lot of this stuff is. Performative, keeps your attention. Brain candy. Kids in the Hall movie. Definitely, you should go check that out too. So if you can actually engross people in content and make money on that, it doesn't really bother you that they may be more depressed for doing so. That seems to be true. So the hate solution. So this is where at least the last quarter of the book, I think it is, goes into this. The hate solution. I don't know if this is the result of him and a group of researchers, but he's listed as the single author of the book. I thought it was actually co-authors, but one author. So as mentioned in the book, there are 4 foundational corrective actions to halt ongoing developmental difficulty brought about by mobile phone and social media use, and then to prevent it at younger ages. So the 4 are, and I believe this is the exact order given in the book, because I did write them down. No smartphones before high school. He would like to make 16 the magic age. So the second one, no social media before 16. The Child Online Privacy Protection Act, COPA, includes stipulation that the kids, children, young people, minors, must be at least 13 to sign up for most things. Technically, you're not really supposed to be reading anything on the internet if you're under 13, which is not practical. But he does make a point of showing that there's no real age verification, and the EFF is against age verification. So you should be able to do whatever you want, even though it may be causing real physical brain chemical damage. Until there's causal proof, 13, who cares? And and he makes reference in the book to like 10-year-old children being impacted by their social media use, developing eating disorders and so on. So phone-free schools, number 3, and that's one that I will probably focus on the most, and more free play. And again, I think he's really focusing on K through 8, kindergarten through 8th grade. In the United States, kindergarten is around age 5. 8th grade is usually age 13. So 8th grade is where you are legally, give or take, approximately 8th grade is where you are legally able to participate in social media, sign up for things on internet websites, use internet websites. Practically, nobody checks that age limit. And I would also say free play, again, not necessarily playground, monkey bars, as they call, playground equipment, the merry-go-round, the infamous, such a dangerous device, similarly not regulated. No age verification whatsoever on the old merry-go-round in the playground. So the free play, again, I think it's simplified to free play in a child development from a child development standpoint. But I think you could just look at it as more interactive free time, not work, not negotiate. Well, there's some negotiation of rules sometimes. He does make a point of that. But yeah, free time, fun time to be with people and enjoy the time. Unless you're like into wrestling, then maybe getting pinned is not as fun, but who knows? So those are the 4 pillars, the 4 foundational corrective actions to help put an end or at least mitigate the anxious generation's conundrum. Encouraging personal growth and responsibility in young people by empowering them with independence, self-determination, and a degree of trust, with freedom from constant oversight. These are points he makes as well as something to do instead of letting kids use their phones, cut down on screen time, but empower them to, except that the 4 foundational corrective actions don't really fit with that, because you're not. So this goes back to they should decide what they want to do. So they're kind of at odds. In my opinion, there is enough contradiction here, just here, to undermine the validity of the suggestions at the end of the book. There's at the same time, Let Grow is about enabling, encouraging, empowering young people to, like I said, walk to school, make their own decisions about certain things, don't feel like they're being tracked. He does get into like cell phone location tracking, whether it's creepy, and it kind of is, but it also kind of isn't. So it's a little bit tricky. But I found the final part of the book, I think it's part 4. I still have the book. I'll probably reread it before I return it. And yes, it's an audiobook. It's not the same as reading. Similar, not the same. I found the 4th part of the book very kind of hand-wavy because of these contradictions. So don't let them use their phone, but let them make their own decisions. That's about as cut and dried as the difference. And I thought it weakened the argument, but I also don't think it's a good idea. Production by a street. So some cohesion between, don't use phones, but let kids make more of their own decisions. That's not cohesive. So coming up with a cohesive program, because again, if this person's into child development, offering contradiction is not a way to make the sale. And if you're going to take such a strong and divisive position as you don't get to use your phone anymore, huh? What? My phone? I'm going to have to go through withdrawal because you want my phone in a bag? I just don't think it works. And if the school does the crackdown, then you just push people into, dark corners to use their mobile devices. One of the closing points in the book is that the tracking of the kids, which reduces a child's sense of autonomy, among other issues, creeps out the kid. And, as he describes it, can also creep out the parents. So they kind of feel weird about tracking their kids online, and the kids are like, why are you tracking me online? So it's not necessarily great for each other. But I will say it does come in handy to be able to share your location. If you're walking home at night and it's dark and you're like, hey, just make sure you see this blue dot moving towards where I'm supposed to be going. So there's a time and a place, but he does make a special point about the creeping out and how it does apply to both sides. So this alone makes me wonder, is merely suggesting, parents should be more attentive to what their children are using on their mobile devices and who they're talking to and communicating with and what they're consuming and so on. That can be a real full-time job. And if they're creeped out by keeping track of where the blue dot is on a map sometimes, what about let me go through your phone? And that's an entire meme of its own. So I personally think pointing fingers and hiding problems are two great tastes that go great together. There does seem to be a general consensus that parents need to do something, whether it's removing the phone from the child's pocket or never giving them one at all. That's the no smartphones before high school. So don't give the kid a smartphone. You can give them a feature phone. The old Nokia 2160 was a feature phone. It had a keypad and I could dial a phone number and I could send text and receive text. And he's okay with that. And Haight is actually okay with FaceTime. He's okay with communicating with friends and relatives one at a time. That might be true. I think it's better than nothing. Fun fact, if you want to have an older generation adopt a new technology, connect it with the grandkids and they will beat a path to your door. So communicating with the grandkids from far away, you have added FaceTime users or video call users, Zoom call users, whatever it is. So communication, keeping it simple, no free reign to visit every social media platform and open up 25 accounts so that the parents don't know which one is you and so on. These tricks are out there. Everybody knows them. No one that wants to use a mobile device or any device to use any online service is going to be stopped because I said so. So not giving them a phone, engagement checking. You have to know who they're talking to, what apps are on their phone, what websites they're visiting, how they're using the device, but you also trust them and give them autonomy. So again, contradictory. And I'm retelling my take on this. I suggest you read the book. It's going to be a topic of discussion. And if you are in this space, if you have children or if you are concerned about this in general, probably worth giving it a quick read. It's not too challenging. Not challenging at all, really. Keeping track of what their friends and their parents are doing as well. If you take the phone away from your kid, it makes another parent more likely, or they may find it easier to take the phone away from their kid because not everybody has a phone. Some people are, so I think it starts to get a little complicated. I don't think you can just snap your fingers and this happens. I mean, if you look at how homeschooling during pandemic lockdowns worked out, parents are like, we don't know what to do with this. Well, now you have to police phones. I don't even know what the word Riz means. I don't know what apps people are using. And as he points out in the book, one person who would end up suffering anorexia, I think, eating disorders, based on body dysmorphia that is blamed on social media, promoting diet, fasting diets, smaller clothing sizes, etc. This person would hide the use of Instagram in this case by deleting the application off the device before going home, reinstalling it while at school. is this something that would be solved by removing the phone while at school? No, it'd be after school. So I don't think it's a snap the fingers problem. The illusion of a unified front, though, I think is troubling because it basically foists the problem, quote unquote, the problem onto the parents, and then the parents are not really equipped to deal with this, and certainly not equipped to deal with their choices and how they impact others. And I think it can be very tricky. The EFF would prefer strong regulations on privacy protection regarding personal data collection, which is a good idea, but they are not in favor of warning labels that would perhaps suggest that there should be some regulation protecting privacy from personal data collection. So they're not okay with a label or a sticker, a virtual sticker probably, website warnings, personal device, like when you open hey, if this is to be used by a young person, be aware, that kind of a warning. That doesn't seem like a bad idea. It will mostly have no impact, just like on cigarettes. He does suggest that phones should have enforced age verification. That is, if the owner, or basically he suggests that the parent should be able to input the person's birthday, give them the phone, and they can't change it. And then that date would be authoritative and it would be used to prevent access to certain things. That's not awful. They could probably be misused in some way, but for the most part, that seems like not totally unreasonable. It probably would lead to compliance with the existing laws, so that might be something new. It would be something of an experiment, to be sure. The EFF, I think, has a kind of an inconsistent position here, but they're also sort of rabidly, free speech first and, personal responsibility, or you look after your own kids kind of thing. So that's the take if you read that article I linked to, especially for minors, but they don't want any age verification. Limiting or prohibiting mobile device use while at school may solve one problem, but it is possible, but is it possible that demonizing a tool today that will only become more and more integral a part of work and life into the future, it could have unintended consequences. Not to mention the fact that you're not learning how to use the device when people are going to be using the device, which is in meetings, in rooms full of people, in rooms where you're supposed to be paying attention, in moving cars until we have self-driving cars, which will be any day now. Distraction of any kind, unhealthy consumption, addiction of various kinds. We'll use a small a. Like if you are checking your phone instead of talking to someone you're having dinner with, or if you're checking your phone in a movie theater while the movie's playing, if you are checking your phone while you're driving, if you must check that notification, if you must respond before you come to a full stop at a red light, there's all sorts of circumstances where the use of the device becomes unhealthy. So if you make it the problem in school for the school day, common sense says keep off the grass. That's where everybody's going to go hang out, is on the grass. So I think there's a disconnect, or it's an oversimplification just in human nature to prohibit the use of something, especially if it is something that is actually going to be used. Right? Smoking is one thing. Smoking generally, like even if smoking was not unhealthy, I personally I can't stand the smell of smoke. So I was like, yeah, no smoking. I'm good. I love it. This is not the case. So using a phone doesn't immediately, unless you're in a vehicle or something, but sitting in a room with other people, you using your phone, if it's on silent, vibrate, whatever, you're not really impacting other people. So, but it's a tool that you're going to be using in those circumstances. It's not like smoking, which is kind of fading. It's out of favor. This is an activity you will be participating in various ways. And so to remove it from the classroom is almost like saying, okay, no calculators, no pens, no erasers. Like, wait a minute. These are all real things that people really use. Why can't I use a calculator? Well, because you could be cheating. No. Yeah, I don't know how that works. What would an engineer do? That is, after all, the point of this entire episode. What is on the table today? In 7th and 8th grade, so junior high school, Royal Palm Junior High School, in fact, in 7th grade, I took wood shop from Mr. Provo, kind of a grizzly old dude. And in 8th grade, I cannot remember his name, but I think it started with an M. More wood shop, metal shop. These were fun. These were electives. Yeah, good times. So I was using these things. They were practical skills. They were skills I would use later in college when I was making a hammer and a screwdriver and helping others do the same. They had extracurricular activities. And of course, I was working in the library, which I just did an episode on Quaggling Sand about. So you'd learn about different skill areas that would be practically applicable to life. That's mostly what school is. In high school, I took driver education and home economics. More learning about practical things. Anecdotally, I heard a reasonably famous YouTuber claim, and this was a couple months ago, but it happens frequently. They claim that college was a waste of time and money because when he graduated, when he dropped out, maybe I think he dropped out, he didn't know how to balance a checkbook. Therefore, college is a waste. That's a problem. You should learn how to balance a checkbook shortly after you learn how math works, which is probably 3rd grade. So somewhere between 3rd and 8th grade, learning how to balance a checkbook should be home economics, maybe. If you guessed home economics, you were correct. Or my high school offered accounting if you really wanted to get into it. That should be happening long before a college decision is ever made that you're doing some of these life skills. College really is about learning how to learn, and you will probably be using a mobile device or a laptop nowadays in modernity. So you should also be learning how those work. Right now, like today, down the street from where I am right now is one of several academy schools, or sometimes I think they now. When I first moved to the greater Vegas area, they were not quite fond of calling them magnet schools, but now it's magnet schools. Northwest Academy, Northeast Academy, etc. So these are magnet schools. The one down the street from me has a automotive engineering auto shop, has culinary training, so there are proper professional kitchens. There are some other sort of vocational aimed programs that you can pursue there. So I've been to that site. I was there for a first robot competition when I first moved here, and I was like, oh, this place is amazing. Like you could literally build a car in this expansive auto shop. It was pretty neat. So people are learning real job and life skills at these types of learning institutions. So people in a high school age range, they learn these skills, and then when they enter the workaday world, they have some momentum behind them, empowering students to pursue their interests and career goals with the tools, knowledge, and academic experience to do so with that momentum. Probably a good thing. And like knives in the culinary classes, perhaps tools should be respected rather than feared, like maybe phones. Mobile connected devices are not social media. They are toolboxes. The phone itself is a toolbox. You can put different tools in it with a variety of useful and dangerous tools, in fact. These are toolboxes that are not going away. If you want to check out the Apple Vision Pro, which is no longer being developed actively, the Humane Pin, which is a dismal failure and up for sale, the Rabbit R1, which is also a dismal failure, has some controversy around it, and just yesterday announced that they have some security issues about, well, anyway, they could be indicators, although the Meta Ray-Ban glasses tell a different story. So who knows what's going to happen, but you will be connected to the internet and you will be consuming content of various kinds. That is not going to change. The tools in the toolbox should be incorporated into educational curriculum. Historical and literary references are all over the internets. You can read tons and tons, or you can even check out library books onto your phone. I do it all the time. With more resources in just this area, just history and literature, than any public school anywhere, any school district anywhere on the planet could ever afford to stock in their libraries. So you are giving access to the world when students are able to use their connected devices. They don't have to talk to idiots on TikTok. Sorry, idiots. But they could be doing real research. They could be doing real information gathering. They could be doing just normal reading. That's okay. Real STEAM. That's what is the STEAM? It's science, technology, engineering, art, and math. I think it's a silly acronym. STEAM, STEM. What is engineering? What is science and technology? Right? Anyway. Information about these abound. There's tons and tons and tons, and you can watch some go check out Sabine Hassenfelder, yeah, in Germany doing what is it? Physics without the gobbledygook, I think it is. Good programming. There's tons and tons. Like you can go and see Richard Dawkins talking about evolutionary biology. You can. Brian Greene has some really good stuff. There's all kinds of science and technology. The Royal Academy in England has some really good presentations of science and physics, like practical. There's, I couldn't even tell you where to find it today, what to search for, but Royal Academy Kids Edition or something, a gallery full of young people, probably 10 to 12 years old, with if you've ever seen like chemistry magic shows, like chemistry experiments that change color, they make noises, they're fire, very, very, very stimulating to the senses. A lot of ooh and ah. So pretty cool stuff. That's all available online. So this helps connect people in one place to knowledge and information and learning experiences that may be in other places. Not to mention modernity is unfolding on a daily basis. You can find information about rocket launches, about the deorbiting of the International Space Station eventually, about the James Webb Telescope findings, about the latest in machine learning and artificial intelligence technologies and the chaos that will bring. So these are things that are happening daily. They don't appear in textbooks, not for years. They're exponentially increasing rates of information addition to the sort of global consciousness that no print textbook is ever going to keep up with. So keeping the phone in a locked bag or prohibiting them completely in school, and what the age at which that should happen might be up for debate. Like should a 6-year-old person have a phone and be checking their Instagram account when they're in first grade? Probably not. I don't know if anybody would really present a serious argument for that. But if you are a 12 years old, 7th grade, and you use your phone in class to do some homework, to gather information, to be interactive in a discussion, that might be useful. Maybe having the phone in a bag works for comedians sometimes. Stand-up comedians like to have the phone in the bag, but it doesn't really help the student. It is painfully obvious to even the most casual observer that education in early years must, like basic classes like woodshop, driver education, home economics, all classes I took when I was young, teach the positive and negatives of the use of the tools and the basics of the class and the skill and the utility into the future, right? Like we weren't making beautiful furniture in the woodworking class. It was more like, hey, here's what you could do if you learn how to use a bandsaw and a sander and a router, right? Here's how you use a sheet metal brake, and here's a metal lathe, and here's what you can do with them. It doesn't mean you're going to be an expert today, but this could be planting seeds. So access to information, access to methods, and planting the seeds of curiosity, that's what school is for. So the mobile connected device is going to be a part of that. Should not be hidden away and feared. You wouldn't fear a bandsaw when you're in woodshop. You would be shown how to use it safely so that you could use it safely. Same goes with driver education. You don't fear the car, you learn how to drive it safely. Home economics, they teach you how to not burn yourself when you're cooking yourself dinner, among other things. How to not cut your finger when you're sewing up operating a sewing machine. So yeah, these are skills that you have to have, and running away from them is silly. We do not learn by hiding from the future. Classrooms in a lecture format encourage distraction and constant device checking if you happen to have a phone. Sitting in a room with everybody facing the front like you're in a movie theater, with the teacher talking to you, or maybe done with the lecture component and now you're just working on your homework, or maybe you're checking your phone, maybe you're chatting with your friend, maybe you're cheating on a test. And by the way, cheating on a test with your phone, that's an old trick. Sharing a calculator, that's another old trick. Like, oh, I didn't bring my calculator. Can I share one with him? Sure. Now you're sharing answers. What's number 7? A, right? Whatever. You have a code for it. No, these are silly. These are silly concepts. Suppose you flip the classroom, and if we're going to encourage free play, why not encourage something similar in the classroom all the way until grade 12, or maybe even after? Face each other, room in a circle, or small groups, little work groups perhaps. Interact, learn from each other. That's the flipped classroom, right? You do your homework home, and when you're in school, when you're in your classroom, it's more about social learning. It's more about engagement with teams or groups of people. You're interacting. Hey, pull your phone out. We're going to do a phone-based exercise. We need something from the internet. We need some data. We need to do a calculation. We need to get actual data sets from data.world or data. There's catalogs elsewhere. We need demographic data for our city. We need population data for census data from what. You could actually be teaching people how to use the resources that are in their pocket. They may be too busy to check their phone to see who liked their Instagram post, because they're actually doing practical projects. You involve people directly so that they're engaging with each other using the tools of modernity. So you're facing each other, you interact, you learn from each other, and you remind each other that human interaction can take place in person with the possibility of collaboration accomplishment. Like, oh, look, we finished our assignment. We finished all the homework. We did homework at home, and then when I came to school, we went over the answers, and we figured out we were all correct, and we did great. Look at that. You didn't have to wait for someone to like or share any of this, and you may be too busy to pick up your phone. And by the way, the question will be raised: what if not everybody can have access to a device? And there are attempts to make tablets available and so on. End of the day, there probably should just be some sort of a stipend that says, get the phone that you need to function. This may not be the latest iPhone or Android device, but get a phone that is not going to be shunned by your classmate. Oh, you're using the free tablet. So you get a device that will include you in the world, so that you learn how to live on, as we used to say, live on the device. You use it as a normal person. You're not using a hand-me-down or a government spyware-loaded Obama phone. Those were horrible. But you are participating in the ecosystem of mobile device users. You are learning how to use it, not fearfully, but as a toolbox full of useful tools. And, for people that are worried, hey, guess what? Extra credit today. Put your phone here on the table. Whoever touches their phone first gets the low score, whatever, right? So you gamify some detox time. So sometimes you're interacting as normal people. Sometimes you're making use of the technology. You're always visible. You're never tucked in the back corner, checking your phone because you're bored, not listening to the teacher, sharing information like test answers, cheating and you can cheat with people in other rooms. It's what's the answer? Number 7. I got it wrong too. The possibilities for misuse are great, but if you start including useful, correct, if you will, use cases for the tools in the toolbox. If you show people like, oh, you can actually accomplish things without waiting for an approval via a like on your Instagram post. Like, you can interact with people around you in person, and you can use your devices in creative ways to learn, use the tools on them as part of the learning process. So guess what you have to do? You have to design your curriculum around modernity. You can't say, oh, put your phone in this bag, lock it up. You're not allowed to touch it for 6 hours. Now open your books and take out your charcoal pencil and make sure your lunch pail is not going to knock over in the one-room schoolhouse. So I think it's embracing modernity and including education around things like critical thinking, things like analysis, like fact-checking things. Like, hey, if somebody says something that doesn't sound right, you have the entire internet. It doesn't mean you check the next result on a search engine result page, SERP. It means you actually do some thinking, and maybe you do some interactive discussion. Maybe you say, hey, I found this on the, do you think this is right? And somebody else might say, oh, let me say, oh, no, that doesn't look right. Maybe discussion groups in your flipped classroom could be about debunking things, about what is Snopes really doing? Is Snopes a valid source of debunking information, or should I be doing that myself? Should Snopes be one input of several? Should I be able to make my own decisions about the content? What happens when someone who tells me they're my age, but their picture looks a little bit older? What should I interact with this person, or should I maybe be concerned? Should I tell someone? Should I go off in silence and figure, oh, somebody likes me? Or should I say, this could be dangerous, and work with the people that I know because I interact with them directly, regularly, and using my phone in school is not considered a crime. It's part of my education. And so when something looks incorrect, when something looks unsafe, you have teachers, administrators, classmates that you can say, does this look right? And they may say, call the police. And maybe you will. There are too many cases where these devices could be used in productive, beneficial ways to ban them and make them the enemy, when the enemy is actually using a device somewhere else doing bad things. That's the thing you need to teach. Stranger danger. If you see something, say something. These are platitudes, but you can actually put them into practice with real examples, real curriculum designed around these things. Driver's education, home economics. So the beginning of the beginning is here. Maybe it was 10 years ago. We have correlation that even baby boomers and Gen X people like myself can identify from personal experience, from our own use of these new, arguably predatory tools in our little connected devices. So I'm talking about Facebook and Instagram and so on. Or from our own use of these new, it's going on too long. I've written this out, so I'm half reading, half ad-libbing. Our perspectives are different. No, we are not Gen Z. We did not grow up with these things in our pocket. We weren't born with a phone in our hand. But if we really consider what goes on in our heads when we see another follower, another like, or worse, our subscriber count falling, being unfriended, there is something worth examining here. So the correlation data should be enough. We shouldn't discount the correlation for the lack of causation, confirmed causation. And that a true scientist may argue, that's not how that's supposed to work. But there is a human element to consider here. So identifying with the correlation and seeing the connection that you may have yourself, seeing how that might be worse, that should be enough reason to say, okay, continue, tell me more. You don't have to buy in 100%, but I think there's enough there to want to know more. If the problem is most easily seen in a school setting, building in positive aspects of modernity makes more sense than hiding from them. So make modern technology a part of learning. Design curricula around possessing and using these devices, information on the internet. I worked for a summer with the Level Playing Field Initiative. They had the, what was it called? The Smash Academy. And the goal for the summer was we need to develop a scheme that will enable curriculum content to be developed from open source material, so content available on the internet, for inner city schools that don't have the budget to assemble like a chemistry. We did a chemistry program. So we said, okay, well, let's start with building a wiki, like using available wiki tools. So those are free, and curating content that would go into this wiki. So you develop lessons that follow through wikis, and then you can have you can modify the content if you find new information, or if you find that some things don't fit. You can move things around. So the nature of a wiki is very easily editable, and you can add and remove and so on. So doing this in a sort of a structured way, so that not everyone was just randomly altering things, but enabling teachers, administrators, people that were focused on this to actually construct a curriculum around available information and try to leave out. In fact, you could even include some dubious information, and part of the learning process might be, hey, this doesn't match the other things. Like, welcome to the world of critical thinking. So if you make modernity a part of the educational process rather than locking it in a bag or making it stay at home so that you can use charcoal pencils on and write on your dittos. Remember dittos? Purple ink with that really smelled weird. We should be able to do that. It is the 21st century. If the problem is most easily seen in a school setting, building in positive aspects of modernity makes more sense than hiding from them. Prohibiting them makes no sense. That only makes them more popular, more desirable, makes them something that must be used when hiding. It makes communication about real personal difficulties, problems encountered, dangerous characters or behaviors, maybe a crisis, more difficult when the activity is considered wrong. You may not be inclined to tell your teacher or your friends, go to the school nurse, go to the dean, whatever, hey, this is happening. Oh, but I'm not allowed to be using my phone, so I'll get in trouble. I just won't say anything. I believe that is wrong. From the book, and this is the last point I will make before I wrap it up. From the book, the comparison is made between gardening, which is cultivation, that is preferred rather than carpentry, which is molding or shaping or assembling. So think of carpentry as top down. I have a design, I'm going to build the parts, and so I already have it in mind, and I'm going to mold my materials to fit my design. Gardening is more, I'm going to keep watering things, and I'm going to hope that my plants grow. I'm cultivating a lovely garden. It's a closing point they make that we should be cultivating, developing children, developing young people, rather than letting social media tools do the molding, the carpentry. But the phone-free approach smacks of molding, smacks of removing autonomy, over protecting autonomy, and cultivating it. So that's my treatise for today. I hope my point was made. I am not a child development expert. I'm not a social psychologist or a psychologist of any kind. But the engineering approach is basically, don't we want people to know how to use these things if they're so dangerous? If they're so awful? Should we, I think the car analogy is pretty reasonable, but also the cooking, when I was in home economics, we learned how to cook, among other things, and there were knives. They didn't say, uh-oh. Now, when I was in first grade, we had scissors that were rounded. They were not sharp. We did have scissors. But when I was in sophomore, junior year, so that was 10th or 11th grade, we were using knives. When I took a home ec class also in junior high school, much smaller scale, smaller space, fewer, home economics oriented things. We did some sewing, we did some cooking. So we're using sharp objects, we're using tools that you would find in a home, we're using hot things to prepare food and so on. I guess it would have been easier to just say, don't touch anything. Don't ever, ever, ever get near a blade or an oven or a stove, or then what? So if we base our realities in fear, that probably has some bad outcomes also. We should be incorporating modern technology into our educational process, into our development process for young people so that they develop good habits and the skills to use them, not fear them. Don't forget, buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. That's me. You're under no obligation to purchase anything or spend any money, but I do post links to the various ways to find my different programs. If this is the first time you're hearing the FFS Talk program, if you don't know what FFS Talk means, you need to know more Irish people. But we basically offer what works and what doesn't and what we can do about it. Here in this particular episode today, it was more about what people are saying and what I think we could do about it. Any of the topics so far, if you look back in the 30 through 31 episodes, this is number 31. If anything sounds interesting and you want to present your side of the story, look me up. You can send email to media@ffstalk.com or just continue to listen at your leisure, and you don't have to buy me a coffee, but that is between that and kofi.com/danhugo, ko-fi.com/danhugo is where I will do more proactive outreach now that I'm no longer posting to LinkedIn and I'm moving to our information sharing platform project, and all of these will be more clear in the near term. I hope you're using your mobile phone right now. It's not that scary. Bye-bye.